Thanks for coming. And again, I hope we can have a good open dialogue here today. I don't want to take up a whole lot of time talking at you, but I do want to mention a couple of things. I was kind of hoping we could focus on staff issues and hear from staff at this meeting. That doesn't mean if you're a student, you know, we're not going to take your comments or anything, but kind of interested on focusing on staff. And I do plan this fall to have some specific meetings for students, maybe specific ones for faculty and so on as well. I do want to tell you, though, that I think the campus is really moving in a positive direction. You know, we have three major goals. One is student success, students finding their passion. One is doing research that matters, research that has impact both locally and internationally, and becoming a Hawaiian place of learning. And I see really positive movements in a lot of directions. Our student success rate is really going up a lot. It's gone up over 10 percentage points, the six-year graduation rate, so that now we're above the national average for public universities. Our four-year rate, we need a lot of work on still, but our 6 years better than the national average. You see our faculty winning awards of national prominence. We see our research programs doing very well. We got some good news a couple days ago that our campus was picked as the 10th most beautiful campus in the country. And from an academic prowess, here's a quiz I'm going to give everyone. I now don't give a talk without saying this, but here's a quiz. So, as many of you know, two of our native sons went off to play football at other universities and got national prominence. One went to Notre Dame and one went to the University of Oregon. Now, there's a world ranking, an academic ranking of world universities, the ARWU, that uses the same metrics as the AAU, which is a prestigious organization of the best American and Canadian universities. So of those three schools, UH, Notre Dame, or University of Oregon, which one of those do you think is highest ranked in the world rankings? Notre Dame, right? No, not Notre Dame. Oh, it must be Oregon. No, it's UH. We're the only one of those three. And by the way, I can throw into that mix Oregon State, Arizona State, and a bunch of other, Washington State, a bunch of other Pac-12 universities. They're not, we are in the top 150 in the world, which puts us 53 to 65 in the US, which, by the way, is AAU ranking. There's 62 AAU universities. So in terms of our prestige and what's considered the best ranking of universities, the AAU ranking, the ranking of world universities, we are in that 53 to 65 category in the United States, unlike those lesser schools like Notre Dame, Oregon, Oregon State, Arizona State. Nobody expects to hear that because we are humble and we're in a culture that doesn't brag. But you know what? I'm the chancellor, so I'm going to brag. Okay, this is a great university, and I want us to be proud of this university. And by the way, one of the things I hope you're seeing also, we have an incredible grounds crew here, and I think, you know, I've had Mayor Caldwell has twice said to me, campus is really looking great. And then to have us get ranked as the 10th most beautiful campus, I mean, I think there's some good things going on here, academically, research-wise, and in terms of our pride. So, with that, I'll shut up and hear your comments and questions. So, the floor is yours. Now, I know I'm an intimidating guy, given my size and everything, but you can get beyond that. Dave.
Chancellor, you mentioned AAU a minute ago. I just wondered what's keeping us from joining that august group.
In the research arena, in the faculty quality and the site, so but just for the general population first, the AAU has what they call phase 1 indicators, which are metrics that are primarily around the accomplishments of the faculty, and they deal with the number of publications, the research funding, the citations, the awards that are won, and so on. It's very clear in those phase 1 indicators and the phase 2 indicators, which are somewhat closely related to and PhD production and so on, that we are of AAU caliber. Where we're probably still struggling is probably the biggest thing against us is our 4-year graduation rate. So it's more on the academic side, the 4-year graduation rate and the time to degree of some of our PhD programs. We have work to do in some of those areas. I think some of the recently enacted changes to the graduate program are going to help in terms of providing competitive stipends for graduate students. We're going to attract better students and beef up our programs, have better mentoring. We're doing a lot of things to try to get that 4-year graduation rate up. One of the most profound probably was, I think the idea was Ron Cambra's, to have new students come to Manoa when they come in their freshman year. They have general interest areas, and we more or less sign them up for 15 credits. And they have to opt out of 15 rather than opt in. So you need 12 credits to get your financial aid, and a lot of students will just naturally then take 12. If you take 12 credits a semester, you're not going to finish in 4 years. You might finish in 6, you might finish in 5. But we're trying to get students then who can to start with 15, and 2/3 of our students this past fall took 15 credits, our incoming freshmen. That number the year before had only been 38%. Many of you know that a lot of our students work a lot of hours outside of the university. We're trying to get more of our students to get those who have to work a job to work inside the university. There's a huge body of research that shows that if they have a job inside the university, and sometimes it can be directly related to their academic work, they're much more likely to graduate. So we're looking at a number of things to try to improve those academic success rates. And that's really, I certainly hope when the AAU opens their doors up next time that we're going to be standing on the top step. Because we really are. Right now we have research and faculty quality credentials that you could say are better than about 13 or 14 of the 62. But it's going to be on some of those academic success areas that we got to keep working on. By the way, just as another aside, last week I was in LA and got to meet with a number of our alum. We had 150 alums from primarily engineering areas show up for a picnic on a Saturday. That we had people from Raytheon and Northrop Grumman and Boeing and everything, and then I visited 2 of those companies the following day. And every meeting I was in, every single meeting I was in, every executive I met, they kept talking about the incredible quality of UH grads. And it was the kind of thing they'd back it up with a whole bunch of examples, so they weren't just shining on the chancellor. And in fact, at Northrop Grumman, they have this very elite level that they call technical fellows. And there's 10 of them at this particular branch. This is the old TRW part of the company. They have 10 technical fellows. Now, they do most of their hiring at USC and UCLA, or kind of in their backyard. 3 of their 10 technical fellows are UH grads. 30% of their technical fellows, when we make up maybe 4 or 5% of their engineering group. So really positive feedback. They say our students work harder than others, and they immediately understand teamwork. Because we have that spirit of the Ohana here. They said the problem we have, that we have to work on, is our students are too humble. So, they go to interview and they've got somebody from New York who's saying how great they are, and then our students are looking at their shoes and saying, well, I really can't take credit for that, it was my team. you know, and so that kind of interviewing skills to kind of brag about yourself is something probably our students aren't as good at, which is a good thing, actually, but long answer, sorry. I know silence is golden, but, and there are seats, by the way, those of you who are standing. Yes, sir.
There are quite a number of courses taught in many departments by instructors or adjuncts, not regular part of the faculty. Do you have any comments on the percentage? Do we have goals of decreasing or increasing that? And what about the compensation or other perks that instructors may get? If they teach at night, they still have to pay for parking. They're not getting an awful lot, you know, per hour if you spin it out. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are on, you know, the use of instructors at fairly low level compared to regular faculty, and whether that's a strategy that is good in your view or not.
Well, I have to admit I don't know, you know, what percentage of our classes are taught by instructors, and my guess is it varies fairly significantly by field. And Reed, I don't know if you have that number in your head.
I know the number is smaller than it was a few years ago because when we left us in 2009, given the contract, the places where a lot of units cut were in fact their contingent faculty. So
Yeah.
we have a much lower percentage than typical universities like us. I can't give you the exact percentage.
Yeah. And that was my feeling too. You know, we are, one advantage we have here is that we are a faculty-rich environment. We have a student-to-faculty ratio, depending on, you know, by the way, you can count that many ways. But no matter how you count it, it's either 11 to 1 or 12.5 to 1, which is far better than you get at almost, I think I could come out and say this, that's probably the best ratio of any public research university in the country. A typical, you know, really high caliber UVA, UNC Chapel Hill are around 16, 18 to 1. Michigan, I think, is 16 to 1. And we're 11 to 1. So we probably don't make use of instructors at anywhere near the level you get in most public research universities. Now, on the other hand, sometimes there are certain areas and certain classes where you want someone who's not a regular faculty member to provide that real world experience. You see this a lot in the business schools and things like that, where you really do want somebody who's started a company to come in and teach you about entrepreneurship, or, you know, someone who's done taxes for, you know, a big company to come in and let people know. So there's some real valuable contributions of instructors. Sir. Oh, and we are streaming on the web, and so we probably ought to always keep a microphone so that the folks out and online can hear.
Aloha kakayaka. There seems to be, is there any problems about implementing the pedestrians only on the walking mall here from Hawaii Hall to, I guess, the East-West Road?
We did just implement a travel with or move with Aloha campaign to try to get people to respect pedestrians, especially those on, I guess the term now is coasting devices. In some cases, it's very hard for a lot of our grounds people and so on, or have heavy equipment, to not use carts to get around campus. But I think you're actually, I mean, I'll admit, you're actually touching on one of my pet peeves. I almost got killed once walking across campus at a former university by a FedEx truck that was going about 40 miles an hour on a sidewalk, on a broad sidewalk. So I think, though, the Move with Aloha campaign, the idea is to try to raise awareness of being safety conscious. So sidewalks are primarily for pedestrians, and making sure that there's respect for pedestrians and their safety should be paramount. So we're not at the stage of banning other bikes and coasting devices and golf carts, but if things get bad enough, sometimes you have to do those kind of things. I hope we don't need to do that, and hopefully this new campaign will help. Steve.
I have something to add.
Oh, well.
I have something to add to that. The campus, who asked that question? Oh, good, thanks. The campus has a landscape master plan that you can find on the planning office website. And it's a conceptual plan for all forms of circulation and planting and civic spaces, social spaces, and so on. We're moving into a design for the implementation of several areas. In those areas, I'll start with Varney Circle. From Varney Circle out to University Avenue along Campus Road. From Varney Circle down McCarthy Mall to East-West Road. From Varney Circle down Legacy Mall to Dole Street. And to look at these areas as our large civic areas. And at that point, during the design of this, and there'll be a lot of people on the campus involved, we will be articulating the pathways for skateboards, ADA circulation, pedestrian circulation, service vehicle circulation, bicycle circulation, and how they're distinguished from one another and how they'll travel with connectivity throughout the campus. So we hope that the, what do you call them, coaster?
Coasting devices.
Yeah, coasting devices will act with Aloha and be able to, and as well as bicycles and as well as on-ramp pedestrians will be able to work with all the different modes of transportation to be able to move safely throughout the campus. So this will be a step forward to articulate all those pathways.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Do you know whether there are any plans to increase the number of charging stations for electric vehicles on campus, particularly upper campus?
I'm going to hand that one off to Steve.
Is Vasilis, you want, I'll take it, okay. So who asked that question? Okay, great, oh, hi. Yeah. We're looking now at bringing in 1.2 megawatts of photovoltaics on the campus. One of the first locations will be on the top of the parking complex. We'll have, hopefully at that point, preferred parking for rechargeable vehicles. So it doesn't, you've got electric vehicles that are charging off an oil or coal station off the HECO grid. It doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So now looking at establishing on campus renewably and recharged vehicles for EVs on campus. No, main campus right now. 1 megawatt at a time, please. Yeah. So that's the way it's going. Yeah, we're looking at that. Yeah. And yeah, it's moving forward.
As someone who has to pay the electric bill, I say bravo to that. Our electric bill, I think, and Steve, you can correct me here, I might be off a little bit, it's like $35 million a year. If you figure we have 15,000 undergraduates paying tuition here, you can see that's over that's 2,000, if my math is right, over $2,000, more like $2,300 per student just to pay our electric bill. That's unbelievable.
So turn the lights out when you leave the room.
By the way, maybe I'll just take this little time here to make a comment on students and their tuition. Many people don't realize in 2009, we received $246 million as a campus from the ledge. This coming year, that number will be 190. So we've had a $56 million cut over the 4 years. That, again, with our number of students, is just about $4,000 per student. This coming year, if our projections are right, we will become a predominantly tuition-funded university on our operation budget. For the first time ever, we will get more money from tuition than we get from the state. Basically, we've had to refill the walk-away from the state. Now, this is not an unusual thing, and I don't mean to bash the state. They have an incredible number of things that they have to fund now that they used to not have. Prisons, healthcare, all sorts of new things, and we have a real, benefits and pension fund problem. So the state's in a bind, and ultimately it comes down to their ability to support and subsidize the tuition. So we're a tuition-dominated, I'll say, university now, like most private universities. And that has to, we always want to put the students first, but now, not only do we want to do that because it's the right thing to do, now we've got to do it because it's the economically necessary thing to do. We have to get into a mode where we realize that if a student doesn't come here, or if a student leaves, you lose money in your budget. And future salary raises and things like that will have to be modified. If we can't attract students here, and we can't retain students here, we will suffer financially. In the old days, that wasn't true. The ledge gave us the money and we did what we wanted to do. But now that student that comes to you for help, if you can keep that student here, you can keep that student enrolled and keep them successful, it goes right to our bottom line. So, we really have to start acting more like a private university. That's another reason why I want this campus beautiful. It's why I want our buildings painted. I want our classrooms clean, our ceilings fixed, our rugs that are mildewy pulled out, good furniture. We actually really need, those cosmetic things are important too. We need to be a place where when students and their parents look at this university, they say, I see myself there, I want to be there. And then we've got to make them successful while they're here. And it was always a great idea to do that. Now it actually goes to our bottom line. Sorry.
Do we have an update on the completion date for the campus center renovation? And has a decision been made on staff and faculty use of the recreation center there?
I think the current is November, early November in terms of completion. The second part is, I always assumed faculty and staff were going to be able to use that.
I have heard that they'll be charged now, unlike down in the fitness center and all the campus. It's free.
It's probably a decision that's going to be made by our campus center board. Is that right, Francisco?
Yes, I don't know if Bonnie is here.
We'll get an answer too. It really is with the campus center board and the campus center staff.
Sir.
Hello, Chancellor Apple. I haven't seen you in a long time. Anyway, I have a question, well, actually two. One about what we talked about, ladder steps, and how is that going? And the other one is tuition waiver. I understand that tuition waiver, every employee on the university has an option to do that. But I also understand that at executive level or APT level can also bring in their spouse doing that. I'm just wondering why we cannot do that the same as the executive or APT level, excuse me. Because I really would like my wife to attend and get her education, because actually she's smarter than me. If you can, if you can see how that policy works with the Board of Regents, because I understand they have the power to do that change. And if I've been trying to send letters and trying to get even on the agenda, it's not even there. So I'm hoping that if you can do that, advocate for us to see if we can have that. Because, you know, you think about it, executive level and APT level, make more money than I do.
Yeah. I got it.
And then I think they can pay for their tuition, you know, spouse's tuition, which I cannot afford that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I will raise that. I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't know that. I thought that the tuition waiver was for faculty and staff.
It is, but only at work. But it extends more with the executive levels and EPTs. That they can bring in their spouse and they get free tuition, 2 classes a day or 2
Yeah,
classes,
yeah.
you know. And then that way, you know, I can see for us to do that, if we get a little bit cheaper way to pay for our full education, you know, another formal classes, that helps us,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And that would be bringing up Hawaii kids
Absolutely.
instead of just
Yeah.
mainland or outside. That would be bringing us. And then, to me, I can see this as working as a family, and we can see each other's kids coming up here, and we can watch out for them, help them. Watch out that they're not in the wrong ways to go, and then they can go and do the right things. Because
agree.
that's the way I see it as
No, I agree.
for us to grow and get educated at the same time.
Yep. Quiet group today. Just contentment, I guess. Yes, Pat.
I'd like to move from contentment to an expression of gratitude. Thank you so much for repaving Miley Way. It's a beautiful drive now, and it's also much safer.
It's, yeah, not me. You know, I had the least of all to do with that. That's the great people we have. You know, I will say that we've got the best. Now, this is obviously going to sound like pandering. We got the best people in the world here. We really do. There is a spirit here, a spirit of Ohana, a spirit of aloha that really is different. You know, I've been at 6 different universities, and so I think I can say this with confidence. This is a special place, and it's special because of the people we have. And so thank you for saying that and pointing that out, and thank you for the myriad of people and those who are watching on the web perhaps for getting this done. And early on, I know there were some incredibly unexpected things having to do with the deteriorating water lines underneath Miley Way that I'd say 6 weeks ago we didn't think there was a snowball's chance of both sides getting done, and looks like now they're going to. So yeah, great job by people, and thanks, Pat, for acknowledging. Sir.
Recently, there has been publicity about an employee who is no longer with the university but is collecting their salary in the quarry area. My question is not about the decision, but whose decision? Where does that lie in the current view of the Board of Regents, acting president, and you?
Well, let me take a second to talk about that. This is a situation, certainly the decision has to be the head coaches. We had a situation where Coach Chow felt it in the best interest of the student athletes and the team to let this person go. It's a personnel matter. We can't get into a whole lot of detail, but I can tell you that it's a termination without cause, because we couldn't particularly specify with cause for a couple technical reasons. And it's very clear from the contract exactly what has to be done. 90 days notice, and then a lump sum pay to the termination of the year. The total cost of all of that is $66,000 for both the 3 months of employment and then the lump sum. It's written into the contract. You know, Ben J is looking at, we've been using that same contract for, 30 years or so, and it's similar to many other contracts, but we're going to look at that. And each time something like this happens, we look and say, is there a way we can change the wording or tighten it up? And we've thought of a couple things. Of course, we'll have to, those kinds of tightenings, we have to pass by the appropriate unions and things like that. So, but it's an opportunity to look at what we do again and see if we can make it better. I should point out, there's 7,260 employees of the university, and these things happen. By the way, I don't want that, these things happen. Chancellor says these things happen. They do. But, when you have 7,260 people, there's going to be a couple that sometimes things don't work out. I think the nice thing is that all the coaches, and Coach Chow in particular, have all agreed to pitch in so that there's no net cost to this. We're not hiring anybody else to replace. Everybody else is going to pitch in. So it's no cost to the taxpayer, which is a really important thing for everybody to realize. It means Coach Chow is going to get up at 3 in the morning instead of 4 now. So. Dave.
Yes, Chancellor, you brought up the unions in that last statement. I just wondered, how would you describe the relationship between the various unions right now and the central administration?
I think pretty good. Just last week, the UPA representation, JN and Christine and Jim, came in to Hawaii Hall, and we had a meeting with my vice chancellors. I think it's a good collegial relationship, and of course, my good friend Walt, a fellow NMR spectroscopist here, and with APTs, we have a good relationship, and so I think it's pretty good. One of our big, I'll let everyone know, one of our big issues this coming year in the biennium is whether the state will fund the UPA contract. That has enormous implications on our budget. They chose not to this year. We're hoping that we can convince the government that this is the right thing to do. So that's going to be a really important thing in this, probably the single most important thing for the university this spring. Yes, Tom.
Hi, Chancellor Apple. When graduate students come in and with a GA ship, right, they usually don't get paid for at least a month, maybe even longer. I know when I didn't get paid until October. And so to get your ID validated, you need to pay your student fees, which is almost $400. And it's kind of a big deal to come in and have to do that when you move here, and you have to pay for your first month rent, and you have to put down a security deposit and all the other financial things that you have to do when you move here, to have to pay $400 more
Yeah.
and not get paid for at least a month, even longer. So I was wondering if there's a way to be able to validate your ID and get your ID so that you can, before you pay your fees for the first year.
That's a good idea. In fact, what I would think is that we could find some way of, since you're paying us for some of those things, is they just kind of take it out of your first paycheck or spread it out over a couple of them so you don't have this really tiny paycheck when you need to.
Well, the
So-
first paycheck, you get a huge paycheck because you get like
You get
a month
some-
and a half worth of paycheck. So
Yeah.
it's usually, it's a big amount of money, and it's a huge relief. But I know if I didn't sell my car before I moved out here, I wouldn't have been able to afford it.
No.
I would have had to beg for money from my parents.
This sounds like a really good thing to bring in payroll, and I don't see Kathy Cutshaw here. I will take that to her. And in fact, if I could ask you, Tom, to jot something down in an email about the particulars. Like, yeah, I end up getting my check on October 5th, and I started in August 25th, and I have to pay this, this, and this. And that way I'll be sure to hit all the, but it sure seems like something we can fix really easily, he says naively. Sounds like we should be able to do that. And
We used to be able to show the cashier's office a copy of a personnel notification form for a GA, and you could get your ID that way. I have to check and see how and why that's changed.
yeah. Yeah, Francisco said it hasn't changed, so okay. So, but we'll get a little group together and see how we can re-engineer that whole process.
I think I've seen like a lot of, you guys have a media campaign where you guys are encouraging students to graduate in 4. I was wondering how much that costs and whether that is effective, and whether it would have been more effective to hire more advisors, or perhaps make it mandatory for students to attend an orientation where that message is pounded in, rather than paying to advertise on radio, or was it on TV? And I don't know, who even listens to the radio anymore?
Well,
I mean,
yeah, so I don't know exactly what it costs. I do know, and hang on, Reed, and then our Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs wants to speak a little bit too. First of all, we're doing about 15 different things and measuring the effectiveness of each of those to help students graduate on time. So there's a whole lot going on. A little bit of that has to be education, to get students to realize it, and I think we are doing things in new student orientation specifically as you suggested. I will say in general, just because it's gotten out in the public about how much we spend on PR, I do want to separate Manoa from that. We're probably the smallest PR office of any university, and that's why people don't know how great we are. We don't brag enough, and we don't educate enough, and we don't inform enough. So actually, if I had more money, I'd put more money into PR. PR is not a bad thing. It's actually a way to get messages out. So, but we're doing a whole bunch of things on trying to help a graduation initiative. Actually, a new initiative we're starting this year actually is to do some high touch with students who have over 90 credits, are in good academic standing, and had to stop out. Usually it's a financial reason. By the way, 85% of the students who stop out without getting their degree cite finances as a major reason. That's why financial aid has been so important. That's why we've done so much to up that as well. But I think this campaign is really a broad-based, and only part of it's the education part. And I can't answer your question about who listens to radio anymore. I don't know.
That's a system campaign. It's not a Manoa campaign.
Well, theirs is take 15 to finish, I think, but yeah, that's not Manoa.
Sir, it's been my experience just talking to students that they really don't work the scholarship process very well. I met 2 Regent scholars who are working, which tells me that they're not getting all the free money that they can. And I think we need to emphasize the scholarship process as early as the 7th grade. I remember researching scholarships for my daughter, who attended a mainland school. And someone who received several $100,000 in scholarship money and then wrote a book stated that if he had to start as early, well, if he had to research scholarships and look for the free money, he would start as early as the 7th grade because he came across a scholarship that had an age cutoff of 16. So if we want our students to graduate without debt, these students need to truly understand that the scholarship process is fishing. If you got 1,000 lines in the ocean, you're more likely to catch something than if you only have 10 or 15.
Yep, agreed. And actually, you said something else that triggered a thought. I think it is really important for us as a university to go out to, I was thinking actually 8th graders and their parents, maybe more importantly, about what prepares you for success at the University of Hawaii, and perhaps even particularly at University of Hawaii Manoa. That here's what you need to do in your next 4 years, both student and parent. Here's the courses you need to take. Here's the kind of grades you should get so that you're ready ready on day 1 for starting at the University of Hawaii.
I was talking to Roberta yesterday about classrooms, and I was very interested to find out from her that for the first time that she can ever remember, the large classrooms, most of them were booked. And I just found that very interesting, that are there larger classes? Is this what's going on? And if we relate that back to wanting to attract students, it's not just the issue of larger classes, but do we have enough faculty to offer all the courses that students need to get through in 4 years? And of course, in my unit, that's one of the problems we're facing, is too many students, not enough faculty, a lot of adjuncts. And, we do have a very good rate with that. Nevertheless, people teach a lot in the summer and teach a lot of extra classes to help students get through, to bend over backwards to do what we can. So I just thought that was very interesting, and I wanted to pass that on. And I don't know if that's part of a trend or if anybody has any insight into that.
Yeah, I will make a comment on your point about faculty. As I said at the very beginning, and some people came in late, I think I can say this unequivocally, we have the best student-to-faculty ratio of any major public research university at 11 to 1 or 12.5 to 1, depending on who and how you count. That doesn't say that our faculty power is distributed in the best possible way. So we're not at the global maximum of usage. We have pretty big disparities of student to faculty ratio across the campus. But in general, we have far more faculty power to teach than any other comparable university. To that end, the discussion we're having with the deans and directors and vice chancellors and so on is how to, going forward, how to configure our faculty in the optimal way. That's not an easy problem. And And, you know, it takes a lot of dialogue to figure out what exactly that means. But we've had budgets typically that have been historic, and we've had positions for faculty allocated based on history. So, and you know, this isn't something unusual. I remember in my time as a chemistry faculty member, I could practically recite the number of faculty and who had that line. Oh, in you know, 1928, that was, you know, Professor X, and then that person retired in 1943, and then it was, you know, departments and colleges have this ownership over those faculty lines. But, you know, as students go into new areas, I think in some manner, tuition has to follow the students to some extent. And so reconfiguring the faculty over time in a gradual process is important to reshaping the university. So, you know, in the year 2060, when the most popular major is biotronics, we have enough biotronics faculty. You know, we have to change with the times.
Thank you. Chancellor, there's some articles on newspaper talking about the government is going to take away the money from overhead by closing the overhead account.
I'm sorry.
I mean, the articles on newspaper talking about the state government is going to take away the money from UH by closing overhead account. That's kind of things.
Yeah.
But Manor is a major research campus. Can you give a comment on this kind of impact on Manor?
Yeah, I'll just say it flat out and hope the legislators are watching. If they take away our research special funds accounts, it would be the biggest disaster that ever happened at the university, and we'd cease to exist as a research university. If our RTRF were scooped, we would never hire another scientist or engineer because that's how we pay their startup funds to get their labs going and things like that. It would be an absolute disaster. Complete train wreck. I hope I wasn't too wishy-washy on that answer.
Has there been a final resolution about the Stevie Wonder affair?
Actually, one thing that's probably important to debunk about Stevie Wonder is the actual cost, because early on at some point the number 1.2 million got out in the popular press, and that was the full cost of keeping the old athletics director on in a new position for 3 years. In the end, we didn't pay a cent. We did not pay one dime to that individual in a new contract. And what's more is because he took another position 3 months early, we actually got back his salary for 4 months, which paid almost to the T all the legal costs associated with putting that contract in place. So from the Manoa perspective, it was indeed a $200,000 mistake. In terms of findings, the FBI has apprehended the people. I don't expect we'll get our money back or most of it back. We might get some of it back, but it was a $200,000 mistake. I would be only giving my opinion if I started saying who was at fault and where the fault would go around. But it's a $200,000 mistake, and unfortunately in the popular media, a number much larger than that has gotten out. Yes.
Hi, Chancellor. I'm just wondering if you can, I'm thinking back last year, in the beginning of the year, you were talking about some of your priorities, and I remember facilities. I remember looking up at these vents, which they're still dirty, so
they're still dirty.
You need to keep that on your list. But I'm wondering, there's leadership changes that are starting to happen with the president moving on. And, can you give me like your top 3 things that you're going to focus on at least the next 6 months or so, you and the leadership team?
Well, I think the thing that comes top of mind always is trying to figure out how to make students more successful. Now, there's the goals that we have, and then there's the ways to get to those. And what I keep focusing on now is trying to align our resources with our priorities. So that's a big kind of changing the way we do business here, both in our budgeting, but also process re-engineering. And that guy sitting next to you helped a lot with that in a particular area. But there's a lot of other processes too that we need to make more efficient, I think. So some of those things aren't so glamorous. They're kind of the behind the curtain kinds of things, but they're really important to do and to focus on. And what I find is it's very important to doggedly keep after them over and over and over again, because there's always a particular inertia built into Newton knew this. There's inertia built into systems, and we've got to keep kind of re-engineering those. And if there's a message I could give to everybody, it's let's really try to re-engineer what we do and not be. I think we have. I said before, and I absolutely believe this. We got the best people in the world here, but some of them are trapped in systems that are not functioning as good as they should. And if we can get through some of those barriers, I think this place, we're already great. That's how we'll get in the AAU, is we will have re-engineered processes to make everybody's going to work that much better and be that much happier and more successful. So, yes.
Hello? Okay. Hi, Chancellor. I was wondering if you could tell us maybe 2 to 3 main concerns that have been brought to your attention by staff, and what will be done to address their concerns, or how we can address them?
Probably the biggest relates to what I was just talking about, how sometimes the systems that they're trapped in don't allow them to do their job in the best way that they can. I think trying to figure out a way to re-engineer the different processes we have. I'll couple closely with that. Maybe a number 2 is that we're behind in the IT solutions that could help people do their jobs more easily. So having more things electronic and having more sophisticated data systems so that people can get access to the information that they need. I do think we're quite a ways behind other universities in that area. I still sign a lot of paper. Sorry, the last university I was at, I never knew what to do when somebody handed me a piece of paper because everything was electronic. And every now and then, there was maybe an old timer would send something up the chain and we'd get a piece of paper, and everybody, what do we do with this? And so kind of getting things electronic. Getting hold of data here is very difficult. I actually, one of those behind the scenes, back of the house things I'm trying to launch is a data initiative, so that when you ask a question, you don't get 3 different answers and they're an order of magnitude off, an order of magnitude in base 10 even. So, trying to get good data that's precisely defined. The third thing I hear mostly from staff has to do with personnel and personal interaction problems. And in fact, that's the biggest, the syndrome of not getting along either with a boss or a coworker. And that brings up another question that I've had a lot of conversations, which is an ombud's office, which I think is a great idea. I have to admit, I just can't afford it right now, but it's a priority for me when we get enough. We're a little resource constrained because of the failure to cover the UPA contract and the fact that $7 million got moved within the system away from Manoa. So, we've got some challenges, but an ombuds person to handle the interpersonal conflicts.
On the ombudsman, why not use an unpaid volunteer? With all these baby boomers retiring, I think we should be able to find a wise fair person somewhere on the island.
Well, there is the concern too. I mean, you're dealing with issues that can get confidential. So, we need somebody who's a university employee and restricted by, in confidentiality to university things. But it's hard to plan an entire structured office around an all-volunteer person, I think.
Hi, my name is Fernando Moctezuma, I'm a student here. My question really quick, out of the whole staff that we have here, what percentage is Hawaiian or part Hawaiian?
I don't have that answer. Elmer, I don't know if you have it. But it does give me an opportunity to say that one of our 3 initiatives here is one of the big 3 is to make this a more Hawaiian place of learning. And we've been working on trying to recruit more Native Hawaiians at all levels, as students, faculty, and staff. I'd say we've had some pretty significant success in all those areas, but not enough, and we need to keep moving forward. Our goal is to have those groups the same representation as exist in the population in general. I'm told we have time for one more question. Yes.
Thank you, Chancellor. As you say, we have wonderful people here at the university, but many of those people work on casual or temporary status. And I know this question is bigger than all of us in this room because it's a systemic issue at UH. DHHL was hit a couple days ago with a story in the newspaper that said that this system of having some people doing civil service work or some people in civil service positions doing the same work as civil service exempt people added to the dysfunction of the agency. And of course, when you have people in temporary or casual positions, that means that they're happy to come here to this beautiful campus every day. They're happy to do their jobs, but they really can't commit and they can't plan because they're not being committed to. So I wondered if there's any plan on your part to get together with other people in the system and address that. And then I'd like to sneak in a second question if I can. You said that we're the 10th most beautiful campus. Who's the first?
I think the first 4 or 5 were all small liberal arts colleges. I think it might have been Elon University, which is, I think, in Kentucky? North Carolina. Harvard was 11th. That's what I remembered. But actually, your first question, I'm proud to say that one of the issues I took on last year very vigorously was this issue of people who are, quote, temps. And I asked each college to look at, and all of our organization, to look at people who had been temps for 5, 10 years, because you're not really temporary, and it's not fair to have somebody not know if they're going to have their job next year when you're relying on them year after year after year after year. and some of these folks, the place would fall apart if they weren't there. So we moved, we identified 57 people and came up with lines for them. And I think unfortunately, the paperwork takes a long time. This is one of those re-engineering processes. And I don't think that's officially happened yet, but it's been in the works for months. And I consider that one of my accomplishments for the first year, because it really isn't right to have these people that are in no way temporary. They need to be secure in their position. Now, you also probably know that we lost 100 lines to the ledge. And what we should have done was done this 5 years ago, and we wouldn't have had all those spare lines sitting around. And so, but we got some of the most egregious and most of the most egregious cases taken care of. Well, thank you so much for taking an hour out of your very busy day to come and talk. And again, we'll be doing this regularly throughout the year. Thanks. Thanks for the great job you do. You're changing students' lives.